Alright, well, spring is coming, so it's time to do some bike riding again. But there's nothing worse than coming out on a pretty day to hop on a bike, only to find that your trickle chargers haven't maintained the battery very well because they got such a low threshold before they cut on. Now you can see on the wall over here I got 2 or 3 different kinds. So I've been doing a little bit of test, and what I found, for every one of them this works good. But especially for those Duralast ones right over there, you can see on the second gen and then also on my bobber, those Duralast ones are junk because what they do is let the battery go down so low that when you get on the bike, if it isn't in its charge cycle or hadn't charged up recently, the bike isn't going to start good because these Viragos take a whole bunch of battery to get turned up. So we can look at these different ones real quick and kind of show the differences, and I'll tell you which ones I like better after my little studies here. But I'm also going to show you a way that you can trick your trickle chargers. That way they'll constantly charge these batteries, won't overcharge them because they are good at stopping when it comes to overcharging. They just don't want to start charging until the battery gets really low. So let's look at these different ones here, and I'll tell you which ones I like better out of the ones I've been using. Alright, so if we start with the stock first gen, the one I'm using on it is this right here. It's an EverStart Max. And this is the one that I put on my BMWs as well because they do a good job on those BMW batteries. Much bigger battery. On a motorcycle, these do really good, and you can see it's blinking because it's charging, because this one cuts on and off pretty good. It actually doesn't let the battery get too low, then it'll start charging again, and it keeps the battery charged up pretty good. Now, it doesn't always do it. You can catch it in mid-cycle and you'll struggle to start, but it just runs along and it's done really good, and my batteries have lasted 2 or 3 years on these chargers. So now let's scoot over here to the Duralast and talk about him a little bit. Alright, so I've had these for a while. This is a Duralast. I think I got it at AutoZone or somewhere. But I'm going to tell you, these are the worst ones out of all of them that I use. Now, these Duralasts let the battery get down so low that it actually struggles to start. And you really got to have a good battery on these Viragos. Now this one's on the second gen, so it's an 1100. So it's got to work the pump, and it's got to start the motor and the whole 9 yards to get that bike going. So these guys right here, as soon as they go bad, I'm going to switch them out. But for right now, I can trick them, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. But for the Duralast, these seem to be the worst as far as restarting to start up your battery charging again. But they cut off when they're charged, and they got a neat little feature that they'll tell you when your battery's starting to go bad, like not taking a charge, where the EverStarts don't seem to do that. So now let's scoot over to this little bitty one that's over here that does really good too. It just doesn't have as much current. Alright, so for the third one that I use, the third type, it's actually an EverStart as well, and I'm tending to lean more towards these because this one's always done really good. It's a much smaller one though. It doesn't put out as much amp, so I use it on a smaller bike like this little 650's got a small battery in it, and it does a pretty good job. It cuts on and off, and I haven't had any problems about it as far as letting the battery drain down too much. But there again, every once in a while you'll catch it and you'll hear the motor struggle to turn over. So over in the other garage where I work on the bikes and all of that, you can see there's my engine test rig right there. It's got a charger on it, a little one on there just like the 650 in the other garage. But over on the big old 1400 Intruder, now it takes a lot to get that one to crank over when it's cold. So my very favorite one of all is this one. It's an EverStart, and we can look there. The reason why I like it is because it's got a little display, and it tells you that it's fully charged. The little display goes off after a while. But when you unplug it or plug it back in, it'll tell you the percentage of the charge, and also when it gets to full, it just reads full charge. And that one maintains really well. It's got a very high trigger on the voltage, I guess, so to speak. And so it cuts on and off quite often on this bike, which is good because this one needs quite a bit of oomph to get this bike to turn over that big 1400. So now we're going to get set up, and you probably saw in the camera there, on these I've been trialing to see if we can improve how these things keep the batteries charged by putting a little timer on there. So this is a cheap little timer. I'll set up over here and show hooking one up on the other bikes, and then we're going to finalize our little test, because right now these are just plugged in straight and I'm still struggling with these when I come out that these bikes don't want to start. But having much better success now that I got a timer over here on the bobber and on the little 650. Alright, so to install one of these little timers, and what the timer's going to do is basically make the trickle charger turn off and on each day. So it's not dependent on how low the battery gets before it cuts on. This guy's going to turn it off and then it's going to power it back on. So all I did was I set it to come on at 8 o'clock and go off at 8 o'clock at night. So that's 12 hours, and it's going to allow me to monitor if I know that it comes on at 8. If I come out here and it's still blinking at 10 or 11, then I'm going to know that that battery is getting a little bit weak. If it cuts off pretty quick, then I'll know that the battery is staying charged up good each night and I don't have any issues with it. But these little guys are going to make those chargers come on and go off and come on every day, and that way it'll keep those batteries charged up. So pretty easy to use, and you can get these at the local cheap store. I think I paid $5 for them. So $5, pretty good investment. It's going to keep these things to where I can go hop on them and ride anytime I want to get on. So all you do is just set all that, and then the little arrow thing, it's at like 15, because it's like 3 o'clock. So I'll set it for 15:30, and this thing's just going to go round and around, and it's going to turn off and on when you push these little things down. Now they make a digital version, which I don't really need, but I bought one just to see what it was about. But they have a programmable, it'll come off and on, you know, all the time. You can set it for certain days of the week, etc. A little bit more expensive. I think it was like $9 versus $5. But we're going to just use the old school ones and see how they do for a pretty good while. So, very simple. Once you set it up, all you got to do is just unplug whatever you got plugged in. And then we're just going to plug that guy in. And since it's past, it's time to start. When I plug it back in there, those guys should light back up. So there we go. So we got power on them, and you'll see they'll start blinking again. This one's gonna start charging because that's that junky Duralast, and although it was showing it was fully charged, when I unplugged it and I plugged it back in, now suddenly it thinks it's got to charge again. So point at hand, that's exactly what I don't like about those Duralasts, is they'll let the bike get down real low and then it's not going to want to start. So you can see when I turn the bike over, I get a couple clicks on my fuel pump and it would probably start, but it's going to be a little bit harder to start than if I had a full battery. So there we go. Now, with those little timers on these things, every day it's going to cut off and on, and it's going to trick these trickle chargers into charging every single day versus waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 days before finally the battery gets low enough that it'll cut on. So now, when I come out here on a pretty day and I want to hop on one of these bikes, I don't have an issue with the battery being down a little bit and these Viragos not wanting to fire over real fast or having an issue cranking. Well, alrighty. Well, thanks for watching.